What we're going to start with is, we've basically got a nice diverse group here. We've got manufacturers represented, we've got laboratories, we've got travel regulators, travel leadership. So basically we're going to look for the different perspectives. We're also going to look at, we've got Oklahoma represented, which is the largest Class 2 generator out there. We've got California, so we've got a lot of different perspectives. And the first question that we're going to start out with, we're going to basically get the perspectives of a few different of the panelists, is from the panelist perspective, what do they think has made and continues to make Class 2 gaming so successful in Oklahoma? And for that, I'm going to start with Mr. Matthew Morgan.
In Oklahoma, I serve as the gaming commissioner at Chickasaw Nation. As Russ said, we do have lots of Class 2 electronic games at our facility. In fact, we have a little over 6,000 Class 2 that we operate as part of our 17,000 games that we operate throughout, our operations. What has made Class 2? I think if you look in Oklahoma's history, first of all, you have to look at where we came from. Oklahoma, for a lot of years, through tireless efforts of our tribal leadership, tried to compact. That was always the light at the end of the tunnel. We need to compact, we need to compact, we need to compact. And during those years of trying to compact and work in agreement with the state of Oklahoma, we stumbled upon a product that was very, very successful to us. Very successful to us. And it's something that our players, for lack of a better term, grew up on. They understood. You go back to Mega Bingo, if you go back to some of the early Rocket games, if you go back to Legacy games, that's what they grew up on. In fact, when we finally adopted a compact with the state of Oklahoma in 2005, we were really worried that our players would not adapt at a lot of locations. Maybe they didn't want to see these Class 3 games come in. That hasn't been the case. We've adapted very well, but we've adapted in such a way that the majority of floors in Oklahoma run Class 2 and Class 3 simultaneously. Class 3 has become a very sophisticated game. It offers a complete system, which is something that, coming from a Class 3 perspective, I think is a little bit different. You kind of see it as your standalone machine when you look at it, and you're running back office systems, and you can pull marketing reports off of it, you can pull accounting reports off of it, you can verify signatures out of the server. It was kind of ironic when you heard from probably the biggest industries coming along and talking about server-based gaming, this new thing out here. I think everybody in Oklahoma kind of looked around and went, yeah, guys. It's been here for about a decade. That's great. That's great that you're doing it now. But not only that, I think not only looking at our tribal customers in Oklahoma and where they come from, I think you'd have to look at the game developers. I know I was having some conversations earlier with some folks, and one of the things that we talked about was a lot of these Class 2 manufacturers have such intimate relationships with not only their tribal customers, but with the players coming into your facilities. They are very responsive to what the players want to see, and I think that has really helped out a lot in the development of Class 2 in Oklahoma, in it, being a sustainable industry there. And I think it is a sustainable industry, and I think you will continue to see it be a sustainable industry. So I think from my perspective, that's really where Class 2 has came from and why it's still there.
Thanks, Matt. Tracy, could you add on to that from your perspective?
Well, actually, Matt summed it up pretty well, did a great job. It's hard to, he's absolutely right. We took bingo players, bingo players are loyalty. I'm not the virtue of looking at Oklahoma, born and raised and bred there in this industry, and then coming to California for the last 2.5 years. And one thing's for sure, bingo doesn't change whether you're in California or you're in Oklahoma or anywhere else. Now, is it fair, and I think it's fair to say for the Class 2, as Matt said, we didn't receive the compact until 2005, and prior to that, yeah, we did stumble upon this game called, it derived off of Mega Bingo, bingo based, bingo driven, which it is. We developed a lot of loyalty, I think, and fairness to people understanding the mechanics, because I find it fascinating to this day when I go and I go back home. I was just back there last week, and I love to go and listen to people play and talk about the Class 2. And it's just amazing, and it's what blows people's minds, is that they still watch that bingo pattern in the upper left-hand corner. They'll tell you what the V, the T, they're seeing it before the wheels are just simulcast. They're just there for entertainment value. But there's a second or so before that. These ladies got it down, man. I mean, not that men don't either, but the ladies have it down. I mean, they have it down. It's just as if you've watched in a bingo hall. How many times you've seen someone play, 15 cards across and going up and down and, dobbing, hitting the numbers, the same as you see someone just do one or two. The mind's a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable thing when it comes to numbers and how they do things and how people adjust things. So I think the success for Class 2 in Oklahoma is that people got comfortable. They feel not just loyalty to it, but they feel comfortable that they trust it. They don't trust their local bingo hall. They won't go there. Yeah, they'll get mad at you and go somewhere else, but they're usually back 99% of the time. So, and that was I had the privilege twice, 10 years ago, to testify before the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs about bingo, and we were looking for clarity. I don't think we needed it, really, other than the fact that Congress and other people or states wanted the clarity. I think we pretty well got it because those of us that sort of cut our teeth in Indian gaming on bingo, we understood it. So I think that commitment that the tribes made back then and to this time, and even trying to go to clarity if that's what someone wants. I mean, it's really simple. Bingo laws, bingo draw, patterns, the question is, are they being manipulated? We've got all those elements that created those games out of there, just as we did bad people that ran bad bingo halls out of there, whether they did it in Indian country or they did it at the Elks or the Moose or whatever, under whatever title it was doing. Regulators have helped accomplish that. So I think that you have a loyalty to that they're confident in the tribes, in the product that they produce, that they put on their floors, and they put their name out in front of it. So I think that could be one of the most fairest things said about it, and along with everything else that Matt went into detail, did very well on. So I think it's just a customer loyalty, but to a different level, not just because they feel good about it. Well, they feel more good. They feel good. They feel, again, a good product. Therefore, you win when you got a good product.
Thank you, Tracy. Ron, from the perspective of the manufacturer side?
I too agree with everything these two have said, and I got into business in 1995 with the very first wave of what we call our current Class 2 high-speed bingo games, which was the Mega Mania game at Multimedia Games. So I had the fun of watching this stuff grow for the last 15 years. I think most industries refer to this kind of thing as first in wins. First time you eat a hamburger, every other hamburger you eat for the rest of your life, you'll measure by that first hamburger. In Oklahoma, we had paper bingo, then we had the handheld bingos, and then when we started off the electronics, that's all the Oklahoma folks knew is what they got in Oklahoma. So they judge everything by that first experience. And we had a very, what I call a neophyte market. Most of our players in Oklahoma, we got a state full of a whopping 3.5 million people. These folks hadn't gone, not very many of them go to Las Vegas or go to Biloxi and do these types of things. So they knew Class 2 gaming. What's happened since then, there was a floor explosion. And a lot of, you got to remember in Oklahoma, what got the compact for the tribes in Oklahoma was Class 2 gaming. The state, the industry continued to mature, the games were faster, the games were more fun, the players were entertained, and the tribes were making a lot of money. So Oklahoma saw that, they saw what was going on in some other states. That's kind of what drove the state to compact. It wasn't ICRA itself, it was that the tribes were making a whole lot of money without them. So when they got the compact, you know, most of the reading material out there said Class 2's dead. You know, that was the last bastion of Class 2 was Oklahoma, and that it would flip to Class 3. I think most of what I see out in Oklahoma is that it's about a 60-40 split, 60% Class 3, 40% Class 2. Now, if you say first in wins and you judge all your future burgers by that first burger, what happened? And I would tell you, having lived through that, my perspective, what happened is the floor space expansion completely went through the roof. A lot of tribes that did not have access to capital suddenly had access to capital because they held up a compact and said, geez, we have a legitimate product. In Class 2 in those days, it was still kind of perceived to be a gray market game because we hadn't had a lot of victories in court at that time. They were pending. And so the capital available for Class 2 gaming was expensive if you could find it at all. So when the floor space exploded, the Class 2 guys, myself included, we didn't have enough titles to fill up the available floor space. So in Oklahoma, and you talk again a neophyte market, up comes your traditional big Class 3 manufacturers, ITT, Valley, aristocrat folks that come into the state, and they say, geez, pick one of any 500 games we have here, and they roll out red, white, and blue, 30-year-old game, but it was brand new in Oklahoma. And it was a wave of title after title after title after title. And it was great for the players because they were thoroughly entertained and got a good short experience on different flavors of Class 3 and Class 2, that mix. But the Class 2 guys simply weren't prepared to pump out that kind of titles. Rocket, one title our first 3 years, then 5 titles and 7 titles. This last year we completed 30 titles with unique math models. And this year, I mean, you've got to be prepared if you're going to compete. This year we're hoping to roll out about 65 new titles. In Oklahoma, we've given our players something very close to that, attention deficit disorder. They expect something new and fresh a lot. The other thing that's kept Class 2 alive, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, we still aren't in a period where our folks in Oklahoma, we do look around and see what's going on with the other states. We see what happened in California. It started off at 1% each, and all of a sudden, geez, you're not paying your fair share unless it's 25%. It's 6% in Oklahoma. 6%. Nobody trusts it's going to get any cheaper than that. There will be a higher price. Also, we're still trying to get used to our compacts, and the tribes now figured out, geez, we gave up a bunch of sovereignty to get something that doesn't necessarily play any better than Class 2. It just happened to fill up a whole bunch of floor space we put in here. So it's cheaper. We also have a commitment from a bunch of the tribes that they're not going to overcommit to Class 3 because some of them, as again, they're getting used to the compacts, they're going, geez, we got tort claims now to put up with, we got environmental deals we may have to put up with, we got this whole myriad of stuff we may not be committed to. So we've got some of our folks that have some smaller places that are Class 2, period. One other note I made that the guys didn't touch on here. We've got some of our tribes, whether it's Class 2 or it's Class 3, and I tell you, I read and help write different things for people, and it's almost as though you get tired of saying Class 2 or Class 3. To me, it's the player's job to really kind of decide what they want to play. They vote with their dollar. And whatever we do on the floor here, we're giving an entertainment value to the player. Whether it's Class 2 or it's Class 3, entertain the player and give them what they want. There's one of the guys that I know, he said, you got to, the art of building a game is you got to make the player feel good after they lost $100 in that machine and make them feel good about it. Now that's a tough thing to do, right? Class 2 can do some unique things that Class 3 can't do. And the entertainment value, I believe, is there. Oklahoma, you know, hide and watch, that's kind of our bellwether state. Our little company's in 14 states. We get to see a lot of it firsthand. Oklahoma's coming back as far as the amount of Class 2 they're actually putting on the floor. I was on a panel a couple months ago with a couple guys with Quapaw. They weren't going to put, when they just did a $300 million new facility, they didn't want to put any Class 2 on because Class 2 is second class. We don't need any of that stuff. And these were Class 3 guys that built it. And the tribe said tough to 10%. They negotiated 10%. They put 10% on the floor. And the players voted with their dollars, and now they're almost up to 20% of their floor is Class 2. Class 2. So again, first in wins, maybe, maybe not. As our products have all matured, there's a lot of entertainment value to Class 2 over Class 3. Plus, it's cheaper to the tribe. They don't have to pay that percentage of revenue to the state. Those would be my comments, Russ.
Thanks, Ron. Just to kind of dovetail on what the Oklahoma gang said too was just for the audience, there was two major hurdles that the Class 2 devices in Oklahoma had to overcome, and these were monumental issues. And this is no knock to the Class 3 gang, but the Class 3 guy said, well, they can't do ticketing. You know, Class 2 will go away with ticketing. I mean, that was a Rocky-sized shot down to the mat. Every Class 2 manufacturer, full ticket in, ticket out testing. Second was when Oklahoma started to go to, you know, central online accounting system backends, Oasis, SDS, ACSC. Class 3 guys said, all right, now they'll finally be out of our hair. Our company, VGT, Ron's company, every other Class 2 company I know of, fully compliant, SAS 602, can work on every single backend that's out there. So, you know, to think of that now, to think of all those tasks, and to know that, you know, 40 to 50% of the floors out in Oklahoma are Class 2. Like Ron said, you know, the players are voting, you know, with their dollar, but, you know, Class 2 took 2 monumental hits out there where the Class 3 guys said, oh wow, you know, we'll get them out of our hair with these 2 things, and, you know, Class 2 is still standing strong. So just wanted to add that little piece to it. I'd like to switch up and get another perspective. You know, we just don't want to go in the Oklahoma side, but I'd like to turn it over to Michael to get a perspective from him. And what do you think the keys are for Class 2 to continue to grow and succeed in California moving forward?
That we don't have the big earthquake and the state doesn't fall in the ocean. That's what we're counting on, because as long as California stays above water, Class 2 is going to be making money in this state. There are 37 million people in this state, and we're within 90 minutes driving distance. Somebody's here from San Manuel. Wow, they have all the commercials. Only 63 miles from downtown LA. Norm, that's right. We're within 90. In case you don't know it, he works for a casino who their pitch man have been Magic Johnson, Cheech and Chong, and now it's Cedric the Entertainer. When you got 3,600 machines, I guess you can afford those guys. We're 90 minutes from a county that has 9 million people, LA County. I think LA County has more people than most states in the Union. Orange County has 3 million people. Riverside County, San Bernardino County, another 5 million. But my grandmother was from Mexico, used to always say, I have a saying in Spanish, Mexicans always say, Mexico, Mexico, poor Mexico, we're so close to the United States and so far from God. Well, in California, we're far from God, but we're close to Las Vegas. And so our players are fairly sophisticated and they go frequently. They were trained on how to play slot machines in Las Vegas, and we had to kind of untrain them. Like, you don't need handles, you don't need buttons, you don't need coins dropping to make money. We used to hear that all the time. So I'm just going to very quickly set the stage for Jerry Schultze, who's going to go into more exquisite detail about why people play machines. You like that? You like that? And but I want to set the stage for him because, and I'm going to repeat some of the things Ron said because the California experience is very similar to the Oklahoma experience. The mechanisms that compel the state of California to negotiate with us are the same dynamic that existed in Oklahoma and Florida. And Pete Wilson finally woke up one day and said, damn Indians, they got those video pool tab machines, they're making a ton of money, we're not getting any of it, so maybe I'll have to negotiate with them after all. We had 18 tribes in California that had a Class 2 gaming operations, and we really didn't need a compact, to be honest with you. We would have never got our compact in California if it hadn't have been for video games, for Class 2 video games. No doubt about it. It set the same things happened in Florida. It set the stage. It forced the state to come to the table. In my wildest imagination, I never believed that we could parlay Class 2 video pool tab games into slot machines and house bank card games. But the siren's call of revenue sharing with the state created that dynamic. So thank God for Class 2 gaming. We never would have got to the Class 3 promised land without them. As our Class 3 compacts began to be implemented, a funny thing happened just like in Oklahoma. Our tribes in California, the big hitters, the big guys, San Manuel, Morongo, Pachanga, they probably could have put 4,000 or 5,000 machines in on day one and made a ton of dough. But the state, Gray Davis didn't want that. So the original compacts in 1999 were limited to 2,000 machines per location, with the option of, in the third year, approaching the state about negotiating for more machines. I remember my wife and my daughter are from Morongo. I remember going into Morongo's casino on a Saturday afternoon, and people would be coming up to you, hey, what do I have to do to get a machine in this place? And so like, I don't even work here anymore. And there was a problem. We had more demand than we had supply. So the Class 2 games filled the void. They were a perfect adjunct on our heavy traffic days, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sunday afternoons. That's why the Class 2 games continued to be viable. We used them for overflow. When eventually then of course we had the argument with the state over license draws. And those tribes that hadn't got to 2,000 machines like Rincon that could have used them, they couldn't get machines. The license pool suddenly magically dried up and there weren't any more machines to be had. Now in 3 different federal court cases here in California, the courts have ruled that the state was wrong and that now there are more machines in those license pool to be drawn. Thank God for that. But that created a window of opportunity for the Class 2 vendors to capture floor space that might not have otherwise had been there, and thank God that happened. The other factor that was contemplated, and Ron commented on it, is that the revenue shares in California are oppressive. They're on gross. No other business in California pays taxes on gross. We do. 10% of gross on a slot machine could be 33% of your net. So when you're looking at a Class 2 game and you're looking at a Class 3 game, you make calculations as, well, it might make less, it might hold less than a Class 3 game, but I might actually net more in the long run. That was another factor. That isn't addressing what DeWitt wanted me to talk about was why players play, but these were business considerations that kept the door open to our Class 2 vendors. So what happened was, and I will flash back to that date that I told you about when we first got our compacts, 1999. We had been going at it for 8 years, and when I put it was Barone and Morongo were the first 2 tribes to ever put video pull tab machines in a facility in the state of California. We got them from Wisconsin, from the Oneidas. They just got their compact. So they had their slot machines, so they put all their machines in a truck and sent them to us. And God, when we opened them, they had bushes in them and snow. I don't know where they had been sitting, but we loved them, and they worked great, but they were like Sega reversed engineered 8-line machines. There was no internet at that time. There was no PCs. There was no laptop computers. There were no cell phones. If you had a cell phone, it looked like one of those walkie-talkies from a John Wayne movie, right? Class 2 came along when the wave of technological innovation and the micronization of computer parts and the increased storage capacity of computers was occurring contemporaneous. And these guys were smart enough to take that and run with it. That's why Class 2 games for many years were more advanced than Las Vegas slot machines. So as I turn it over to Jerry, I just want to point out that as time has gone by, the Class 2 game has evolved into a very entertaining, very classy looking device that for all that we call it, it's transparent. Most of our players don't know that they're playing a Class 2 game. There's the secret. Your really sophisticated players might, but if you do it right, you can integrate Class 2 and Class 3 games on the floor, because for the players, the playing experience, there's not much of a difference. Hit frequency, that was critical. Speed, critical. All the bells and whistles. Now we've got 4 of Rocket Bingo's new Class 2 games on our floor, and that stepper wheel that they've got up there is killer. It could compete with anything that IGT has on our floor. It's there. And the back shot.
Do you take credit cards?
Yeah. I wish you hadn't asked that, because right now we're still fighting about, can we take the welfare credit cards that the state of California gives out. Does your ATM machine take a welfare? I didn't even know it was a welfare credit card. You hide them so we won't know they're on welfare.
I thought you were going to point out that you're a gaming commissioner and we're on camera.
Yes, we are. We do take credit cards at Augustine. We take ATM cards and debit cards. We don't take checks. But the back shop. Actually, Class II gaming operators had more sophisticated black shop applications in the early days than did the Class III guys. And player tracking, accounting, real-time communication was already being developed by Class II operators and tribal operations before we ever had server-based gaming. I'm really glad you said what you did, because server-based gaming is not a new technological breakthrough or innovation. It's how smart IGT is. They saw what we were doing and they said, if we can make something like that and put it in a Class III machine, we don't have to sell machines. We'll make more money just providing services to our customers. And if you look at IGT's financials today, they make more money off of providing services than they do selling slot machines. Server-based gaming is nothing but a hybrid form of Class II gaming. And these guys taking these big, huge, powerful towers were able to adopt the ability. Somebody made the comment that if you were all dumb terminals and there was a mainframe sitting up here, you would all be playing from the same pool of prizes that everybody else is playing for. That server-based gaming concept is as I said, an adaptation of Class II. So to end this is that Class II gaming is evolved, and it's continuing to evolve, and it's continuing to adapt to the ever-changing technological environment that we work in. And I wanted to make that point because for gaming regulators, this is the world we live in, right? And it is a little bit overwhelming if you don't have a technical background, but you're required to have this knowledge base. That's why a lot of you are here. And that's why the partnership with our vendors has changed. Used to be when I first did it, they'd roll a machine off the floor, they'd throw it on the ground, they'd plug it in, and they were gone. The type of technology that we're using today requires a partnership between our vendors to make sure that everything that we have is current and is being operated correctly. And it also, I want to end with this, has required a more sophisticated and higher level of employee on our part, right? Two of the hardest things in our business to do are find internal auditors and IT people that can actually keep these things going. That's the brave new world that we've entered into, and I'll end with this. Is that we've succeeded because Indians found a way to do something that the Congress never thought we could do. We figured out how to make money off of bingo by using computers. And they're pissed, and they're trying to take it away. We have an obligation to protect our ability to continue to do what the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act said we could do. Use current and emerging computer technologies to expand our player base by taking advantage of those computer technologies. Because back in the day when my daughter was first being born, there was no internet, there were no PCs. She's 17 years old, she's a daughter of Morongo, and I hope one day she'll become a Morongo Tribal Council member and hire me as a consultant. But our kids on our reservations are depending on us to make sure that future tribal gaming commissioners and tribal leaders can take advantage of the technologies that haven't even been invented yet, that we don't even know about. We should have learned something about what happened the last 20 years. We're living in a world that's constantly changing, and our vendors are that door that we step through to be able to access those emerging technologies. Thank you.
Jerry, if you would provide us with your exquisite detail.
I don't know how exquisite I can be after Michael. It's either Sharon House I follow or Michael Lombardi I follow, you know. So if you know Sharon, she keeps you ripping, and I have to do the dull stuff, and Michael comes in and takes all my thunder. But anyhow, yeah, played. Anyhow, we got into Class II gaming in about 2002, and with Ron's company, Multimedia, and I spent, 3 times I went down there and looked at everything to make sure with Pachanga, you know, and we were the first actually to bring them in. And we brought them in because, as Mike said, we had 2,000 machines and we could have probably used 5,000 machines at the time. The problem we found out, though, unlike Oklahoma, where they're used to slots, I mean used to bingo, we were slots. We had to teach our players how to use these Class II machines. They're not used to pushing that damn machine twice. They're used to pushing it once. And we got in the wrong side of NIGC with their legal affairs person. We had to have it done 3 times until Nick came out and helped us out on that later. But so anyhow, we took all of our Class II machines and converted them into the New York Lottery through multimedia. And those things were making 90% of floor. We had 1,800 of them. Well, Governor Schwarzenegger ended that for us, like a lot of other things. And so we went back to Class II, and again, we had to make it a 3-touch, which killed it. Penny Coleman told me, she says, I don't know why you guys are ever messing with this. Class II is dead, quote unquote, okay? So now we've got 2,000 Class 3 machines in our casino, and we pay $18,000 a year per machine. Pretty cheap, right? But we have a gas station, and I'm happy to say that it's got 40 Class 2 machines, and it just turned a Tier A, which means over $1 million revenue. I mean, that's pretty darn good for 40 machines. We have a bingo in our old casino, and we have 40 machines over there. And they only played 5 hours a day and stuff, but we get more play off of the machines than we do off of our bingo. So we have decided that we're going to keep Class 2. In fact, we got what he said, we got his machines, and it's been almost floor. Some days it's a little lower, but some days it's floor or more. And our floor is 450 or 500, it depends. So going back to this, to make it successful in California, we're going to need some help from NIGC, okay? And with the auto dot feature, okay, or as we say, 1 touch, 2 touch, 1 touch, 2 touch, okay? Our slot players like these. And then when you could come up with some neat themes, you got this penny machines, which $1 million jackpot, which is a WAP, it plays well. And so that's what I'm saying. We need up-to-date themes from the manufacturers, like Ron's bringing in 60 new and stuff, that's fine. Get outside the box, come up with these WAPs, these jackpots, things like that. It's things that we could really market. Manufacturers, so also guys, you have to maintain your product for us, okay? Some manufacturers are great, we got a problem, they're right there. Others, we call and call and call. We have like 3 different manufacturers now, and we don't get any response back. So guess who are getting dumped? Costs have to make sense to the tribes too. That's very, very important. If you consider what we have to pay, like we pay 15% on floor of any machine over 2,000. So if we're paying 20% or 25% to a Class 2 manufacturer and they provide everything for us, it makes sense to us. We can do that. People have had problems getting licenses. Calusa, Harris property down there, Rincon, others. It made sense then to bring in Class 2 machines. And if you guys keep up with the current themes and new toys and bells and whistles and all that good stuff, then I think you'll be able to be successful with that. And here's the one big thing that I think we really need help from. The Class 2 mix were put in, and they went into effect. They went through the Federal Register, and they were supposed to go into effect in October 2009. They were put on hold. And I don't know, guys, if you guys have had a chance to look through them yet, but they're about 90 pages, okay? And what happened was, we had 542 rules, which I agree with Norm. They need to be maintained because everybody relies on those things. But since NIGC couldn't do Class 3 with their crits, they came out and did a 543, which we were all involved with for a long time. And the 543 mix, in my opinion, the cage requirements, they're pretty onerous, you know. They're stricter than the Class 3 ones, which means since we have Class 2 in our facility, we have to also meet those because they're the strictest. And we don't know what's going to happen. I think the jury's still out. Norm was involved in a lot of that, you know, when he was on the commission. But we don't know if they're going to hold it again from October or not. But if not, there's a lot of stuff there, guys. And there's a lot of things that are going to be a lot more difficult for us as commissioners and stuff. So again, I've talked to the new commissioners. They seem pretty receptive about things. They have a new legal affairs person and some new staffing in there and everything. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But to make it successful for us, that's what you guys have to do. That's what you manufacturers have to do. And in my opinion, from playing with this stuff for this time, that's what we really need. But it's not dead. It's certainly not dead. And I can see a nice future for it as long as you guys are into that group. Okay?
Thanks, Jerry. To switch gears a little bit here too. Now, I want to go over to the testing side and some of the expertise on that side. And I'm going to start with you, Nick. So with your background and knowledge, from the testing lab side, regarding Class 2 systems, describe, if you can, very briefly the technology and what some of the misconceptions, might be about people they have regarding Class 2.
Sure, and thanks, Russ. I appreciate that. As he saved the engineering folks for last, and those of you that know engineers, each of us got about 5 minutes to speak here, and that's about 4 minutes and 30 seconds too long for an engineer. So this is all good. So I'll keep this brief. But some of the misconceptions that I hear about Class 2 games are that what Jerry spoke to. Class 2 is dead. Bingo is dead. Those types of things. Well, it's alive and well. It's alive and well in Indian country. And there's a lot of charitable markets out there that see what Indian country has done with Class 2 gaming, and they want a piece of that action because they're allowed to have bingo too. And it's sparking a lot of interest and a lot of controversy. Good controversy, I think. But another misconception is that Class 2 gaming systems play slower than Class 3 games. Well, that's arguable. When you look at the turnover on some of these games, it's hard to say that they play slower. Maybe the players have to interact a little more. But certainly the dollars speak for themselves, and I think that they're competitive, which is another misconception, that Class 3 gaming systems aren't competitive, or Class 2 gaming systems aren't competitive with Class 3. And as Ross mentioned, and Jerry and Mike talked about, you look at California and Oklahoma, and there's significant percentages of floors that are Class 2 competing head-to-head with Class 3 games and holding their own. So, there's a lot of misconceptions there. Another misconception I think that comes out from a lot of the neophytes is that Class 2 gaming is bingo, and bingo is your grandmother's game that's played in church and local Indian bingo hall. Well, if anybody's walked into an Oklahoma facility or one of these facilities in California that have Class 2 gaming, you'll find that it looks and resembles a lot like a Class 3 gaming device with the video screens and the bells and whistles and the entertainment values that you get out of it. It's not so much an ink dauber and a piece of paper anymore. Class 2 gaming systems have been some of the most technologically advanced systems out there in the industry. A lot of what you hear coming up in Class 3 with server-based gaming downloadable software, to quote a journalist in the gaming industry, these Class 2 system providers are saying, been there, done that. And they've been there, they've done that. They've been doing it for over a decade. They've been doing server-based gaming, they've been doing downloadable software, and doing it well, and doing it securely. So there's a lot of that going on in Class 2. They're doing central determinant games. Bingo is by its nature a central determinant game. There's a ball draw. They're doing this over a wide area network with multiple properties in different locations, competing for the same ball draw for the same common prize, which is something that Class 3 providers are just now looking at with progressive systems and multiplayer type games. You're seeing it in Texas Hold'em type systems where properties are trying to link people on tables in different properties to compete against each other. Well, they've been doing it in Class 2, playing bingo in multiple properties through these wide area networks. Jerry alluded to the one-touch, two-touch type games out there. Why? Because in Class 2 bingo, you have to have active participation, you have to have a bet, daub, and claim. Two-touch game, well, what does that mean? And Class 2 gaming system providers have looked at what engineering schools have taught. When you press a button, and it goes from the 0 state to the 1 state, when does that happen? Is it active high or active low? And that means, does it happen when the button goes down, or does it happen when the button comes up? And think about when you use your mouse. You push you click on your mouse and you can drag things. Why? Because it doesn't stop until you release it when the button comes up. And a lot of Class 2 gaming system providers have seen that, well, if you push down, that's one action. If you push up, that's another action. There you go. You got 2 touches with one action of a human finger. So you know, that there's a lot of innovation in Class 2 gaming systems that I think are overlooked and misconceived. And I believe, in my own opinion, that Class 2 gaming systems are some of the most technologically advanced systems in the gaming industry today.
Thanks, Nick. And last but not least, my partner, big-headed Pollock over here at the table, is gonna bring up the rear.
Well, I certainly relish batting cleanup on this topic. I think all the talking points that I had were pretty much picked apart. So I'm going to go with a couple of angles that I think I could talk about, you know, that hasn't been brought up yet. Obviously, the technology. I agree with everyone who stated that the technology, in my opinion, is more advanced. I have 10 years testing experience at both GLI and BMM, and you know, dealt a lot with Class 3, especially on the system side. And you know, I really got immersed in Class 2 when I came over to BMM about 3 or 4 years ago, and you know, I was amazed. You know, I did some Class 2 while I was at GLI, but you know, BMM was really doing Class 2, and that's really how they were doing business. And the technology that's involved, as Nick pointed out so eloquently, the wide gamut of technology that's being used. One area that, you know, you hear so much about network gaming on the Class 3 side, and one of the vehicles they're using to do network gaming, and one of the things that's been their biggest stumbling block, in my opinion, is the communication protocols that they're using. It's basically they were stuck in kind of a serial environment, which is not very fast. It's not made for sending information back and forth very efficiently and quickly. So they had to come up with basically an Ethernet-based protocol, which they call G2S. But prior to the G2S, game to system communications, Gaming Standards Association, the first protocol that they really came out with was S2S, which is system to system protocol. And that protocol probably would have died out had it not been for Class 2 gaming in Oklahoma particularly, because each of these Class 2 vendors, Ron being one and Russ's company being another, in Oklahoma they had to assimilate onto the Oklahoma gaming floors, which, as has been pointed out in the last 2 panels, roughly a 60-40 split between Class 3 and Class 2. And with that, you know, the Class 2 vendors had their own basic networks. Each vendor themselves has their own enclosed network, and for them, it was difficult for them to relay their accounting information or their player information, or to take a ticket from one of those Class 3 games and put it into a Class 2 game, because they had their own network. And the Class 3 games basically had their online system tailored for them, and the Class 2 guys had to kind of assimilate into that environment. And the technology, system to system protocol, allowed them to do that. And it had a big effect, obviously, on their ability to assimilate into a gaming floor, and it talks about that transparency that we've heard so much about. Yeah, it's now transparent, because those Class 2 games can sit right next to a Class 3 game, and only to the most perceptive patron can they tell the difference from standing 10 feet away which game is which. And you know, a problem originally was you couldn't take a ticket into that Class 2 game that came from a Class 3 game. That all went away. And you know, for an organization like the Gaming Standards Association, that was a big deal for them. That was their first protocol that the industry built from the ground up, and it was made successful by Class 2 gaming, in my opinion. And that is one area of many that were discussed. That one's always fascinated me. I wrote a little article for the Network Gaming Guide that was out last year for CEM, and I talked about that. My first experience in Oklahoma on one of these very advanced, in my opinion, gaming network floors, where it integrates all these technologies that the geeks the geeks that Mr. Farley and I are that can only appreciate these kind of things, but I was impressed. It was all conceptual to me in the laboratory. In the laboratory you can create environments and you don't really see how they're being used in the industry. My first experience in Oklahoma, which Mr. Harris actually referred to, well, one of my first experiences was the opening of the downstream casino. Russ and I actually were on that team that helped the quad pods to open that. And after I got through the awe of seeing how all these machines were integrated together and communicating, I was also awed by the fact that, as Ron intimated before, that the people who were the running that casino basically were telling Russ and I that we want to make sure the Class 3 games are up for the grand opening, and that's all they were focused on. We kept telling them, you need to get these other Class 2 machines up. Class 2 is not second class, and sure enough, there were a few machines that were not up, and they happened to be Class 2 machines, and we were shaking our heads like, that's not a good thing, especially in Oklahoma. And sure enough, when they opened those doors to that state-of-the-art casino, which is beautiful, by the way, all the patrons made beelines for the Class 2 machines, and we were standing with the the director of slots, and he just was dumbfounded. He had come from Arizona where it was a Class 3 casino, and he was dumbfounded that there was actually people lining up at some of the Class 2 vendors' machines, and they were bypassing the 1100 three-character manufacturer out there. They went right past those state-of-the-art machines, right to those second-class machines, those Class 2 machines. So we were actually even amazed by that. To see it actually happen, it was pretty amazing. So I'll leave it at that. I know we're running short on time. So.
I hope it kind of covered what you guys were hoping here. Kind of got rid of a lot of those misconceptions about Class 2. And does anybody have any questions?
I think that you get the flavor that our industry still isn't where it needs to be. I think that a couple times up here we talked about, some of our folks up here talked about how the NIGC, they need to help. We've got a set of mix that aren't complete. Inside the 547, or that's 547 I think is technical standards, 543 is the mix. The mix refer back to 542. And some of those 542 regs absolutely do not work for for Class 2 gaming. They just simply do not. That needs to be completed. I will tell you also that the technical standards and the Class 2 mix that are published were provided to the NIGC, the vast majority of it. Those are written in less than 50 days. Less than 50 days. There are a lot of folks out here that helped write those regs, that participated in what was called the Tribal Gaming Working Group, TGWG. That group's going to get active again. And if you want to write down my email address, it's ronh@rocketgaming.com. It's ronh@rocketgaming.com. I've got a mailing list of over 500 people that participated one way or another in helping to write those 543 and 547 regs. The NIGC does need help. And the industry pulled together, and former Chairman Hogan takes a heck of a beating out there. And maybe in some circles he deserves it, but in my eyes, Chairman Hogan is the one that stopped probably the 20 to 25 million that the industry spent, that would have spent in court with uncertain outcome for tribes. He stopped it. He opened up this 50-day march for the Class 2 folks. The industry rallied, and I don't mean just manufacturers. There were tribal regulators, there were gaming laboratories, there were tribal regulators, attorneys. In any given meeting, we had 45 to 75 people. Hardcore, incredibly knowledgeable people. We need that same push. We've got some problems in 543. We've got some problems in 547. The industry's best suited to advise the NIGC what to do with those regs. We are. They're understaffed. They're trying to get their house in order. As Chairwoman Stevens says, we need to, and there can be some emails flying around, we're going to start having some meetings again with this working group to come up with some suggested regulations to the NIGC. We did an incredible job given the time frame that we had. So the new commission, I think, is very receptive to this. They know that they're understaffed, they're undergunned as compared to what the industry's doing now. So I think our work will be very well received. I know that there are at least 4 states, and I was just advised last Friday on a phone call, there's a 5th state where there are tribes that are looking to open up Class 2 only places. Class 2 only, kind of what we almost would call a micro casino, a lot of 50 to 100 to 200 unit places on pre-88 land where the tribes are under duress by their states. The states won't negotiate. So these tribes have watched and studied Class 2 long enough to sit here and say, you know what, we don't need any of that. We'll just go open up our own deal, Class 2 place, we need some help with it, and so we're going to help. So my plug is this: if there's anybody in the audience that wants to help, and there's already a bunch of you that already have your email addresses and are on this mailing list, but if anybody, particularly in the gaming regulator side, that wants to jump in and help to do this process, it's a very hard-working group, but I think you also find it to be pretty rewarding.